So like I said, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight for our May Day Virtual Community Forum Biomass series. We will be gathering in this space most Thursday nights in May and June. We have a fantastic lineup of climate activists and community members who are eager to share their personal stories with you about how biomass has impacted their lives. I will drop a link in the chat where you can see our full series of events and register. I'm going to do that right now. And if you learned something new today, if you feel moved today, I invite you to please share our event opportunities with others. I'll be one of your hosts. My name is Adele Alamo. I'm the digital organizer for Dogwood Alliance, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, ella y suya. Dogwood Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. For over 25 years, Dogwood Alliance has fought threats to our forests and frontline communities. We promote forest protection as the best solution to climate change. We partner with communities across the southern US to develop economic solutions that work with and for our forests. Our mission is to advance environmental justice and climate action by mobilizing diverse voices to protect southern forests and communities from industrial logging. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are recording this session and we plan to share the recording with all registrants. We will make space for a question and answer session at the end and throughout. The Q&A is open, so if you have any questions for our hosts or panelists, please drop them in the Q&A. I will do my best to answer pressing questions in real time and hold some questions for the Q&A session. The chat is only visible to hosts and panelists for security reasons, but feel free to message us in the chat if you want to connect that way and let us know where you're from or anything else that you would like to share with us. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Dogwood Alliance's Director of Organizing and Partnership Engagement, Erniko Brown. Erniko is the Soil and Water Commissioner of Greenwood, South Carolina. She's the Environmental and Climate Justice Chair for the South Carolina NAACP State Conference. And she is the Executive Director and founder of the nonprofit OURS, which stands for Organized Uplifting Resources and Strategies. Erniko, take it away.
Thank you, Adele, and good evening, everybody. This is an awesome opportunity for us to come to you and talk about what biomass is. For a while, we've been in communities having conversation with individuals about biomass as it relates to their community, and then bringing it back here to Dogwood. And so we decided to have a conversation with leading community members, activists, and leaders about what's going on as far as biomass is concerned and how people are impacted. So this is the first session in the series. So tonight we're kicking it off. Thank you for being with us, where we're having conversations about biomass. This is indeed the May Day Biomass series because we take this serious. It is very urgent to have these emerging conversations because many people don't know about them. And so we really want to take the opportunity to do ongoing education for anybody who is impacted, people who don't know about this, and people who are curious about what's going on. So we are indeed glad to have you all with us. And today on this panel, we have Ms. Kathy Egland. Ms. Kathy Egland is a part of the board for the NAACP. She is the co-executive director of ECHO. Just an all-around amazing person. I'm not into her accolades. I'm into who she is as an individual. And she is a prominent woman in this work. And what makes her important to me, she's a Black woman in this work, doing this work for communities. And we also have Ms. Belinda Joyner with us. Ms. Belinda Joyner is the founder of the Concerned Citizens of Northampton County. She's an NAACP member, and most of all, she is a Black woman in an impacted community. So these conversations are with a twist. Here at Dogwood, we are in service to communities, and so we are utilizing our platform to bring the people who are most impacted to have these conversations, because we are committed to centering communities here, and these are people of the communities that are impacted. So without further ado, we will start off with Ms. Kathy Egland. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erniko. And let me share my screen. I only have a few slides because I want this to be more conversational. And what I would like, if you would please start putting your questions in the chat. I'm sure that there are quite a few questions. And if you would please start putting them in the chat, that would be extremely helpful, because what I'd like to do more than just talking to you, I want to know what it is that you would like to know so that I can answer any questions that you may have. But briefly, I'm just going to go over a bit so that we can understand the terms and some of the terminology. I know that quite a few people were a little confused about some things. And when we say biomass, that there are different types of biomass. There are just many different forms of biomass for this particular presentation. And I'll give you some examples. You can use garbage, you can use animal waste, you can use human waste. I've actually been in Tanzania, and where schools were actually using human waste to fuel, to provide energy for their school. And I don't know a lot about other forms of biomass. I've studied wood biomass extensively, but I have not done as much in-depth study as it relates to other forms of biomass. But I do know that there are many different forms where you can use. And I do know also, now when we talk about wood pellets, that's a wood form of biomass. Now, usually you will hear from people that it comes from waste woods, or you'll hear people justify that it's necessary, that it helps with the proliferation of forest fires. None of that is true for the most part. Wood pellets are, and we have so much proof, we have photos, we've seen proof of where our forests are being cleared. You can just drive into any area that's doing wood pellets production, and you can see truckloads of mature trees loaded on those trucks. So, and that's what we talk about when we talk about wood biomass. And that is using our forests for energy. And not only are we, especially here in the US, manufacturing wood pellets to be used for energy, to be burned, and we're shipping them across the ocean to be burned for energy in other countries. But now they're even talking about fueling flights or using wood biomass as jet fuel. So our forests are more and more in danger every day because they think this is a good idea. And we have all, it's so imperative that we all raise our voices to prevent this. It is not just an injustice or just as it relates to our forests. It's not an endangerment for our precious forests that really provides us so many benefits, but it also endangers people. And so that's a little bit about what a bioenergy and the different types of bioenergy and different forms of bioenergy. And there are so many other positive forms. For instance, when we talk about renewable energy sources, you have the sun, and we already know the answer to combating climate change is carbon-free renewable energy, such as wind and solar. And this is renewable because it's natural. It's something that we get every day. Now, you will hear people say that wood biomass is a renewable source of energy simply because you can replant trees. Trees will grow back. But what they don't tell you is that they will not recapture the carbon at the same rate and we don't have time. Time is not on our side. So trees will not recapture the carbon. It will take decades for trees to grow back to the benefits of mature trees that are being cut and used as energy in other countries. And this is something that we should prevent at all costs. So when we talk about, and a lot of times I'll go into communities and, you know, when we're talking about and talking against wood biomass, people look at the economic benefits because, you know, they question, well, how do we feed our families? And how can we cool our planet and feed our families? That's a great question. We can do both. And unfortunately, many times we have been made to feel that the only way that we can get a positive result for something that we need is by using something negative, such as wood biomass. What we need is a just transition to clean, carbon-free renewable energy sources. That's extremely important. And in a just transition, we're looking at clean jobs. We're looking at people who have been in the labor force, who have supplied our energy needs from the traditional source. We're looking at being fair to that labor population and making sure that those individuals have access to being trained for clean jobs. So we don't need to settle. We don't need to settle for whatever it is that they bring into our community. We don't need to settle for risking our families' lives just to be able to feed them. We have to demand justice every step of the way. We have to be able to respect people and our planet. And we're not doing this, especially when we look at wood biomass. We're not respecting people, we're not respecting planet. And the reason this is so important, and I've mentioned on Earth Day that there was probably a good intent, I don't know, but there was probably some well-meaning intent around this when it began. And because we need to get, and scientists have told us that we have to get our global warming well below 1.5 C. We still must do that. There are ways that we can do that. Corporate subsidies. Corporations are getting billions of dollars in subsidies every year. Those billions of dollars need to be going into community care. Those billions of dollars can help communities to access clean, renewable, carbon-free sources of energy. And so we've just got to get beyond, we've got to decide, and we have to demand justice. We have to demand that everyone has access to clean, renewable source of energy. And we have to demand an end to these corporate subsidies and these climate hoaxes. I don't even like to call wood biomass a solution. It is a climate hoax, and it will not get us to the much needed 1.5 C. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how we have to look at a just transition at the end of this, at the end of my presentation. So what are our rights and how do we protect them? Again, we're always looking at economic advancement versus environmental stewardship. They're both important. We need economic prosperity. I mean, this is something that we have to have, but not at the expense of our planet, not at the expense of causing environmental harms to people. And I ask this question, do you want to be informed? Because one of the things when I talk about our rights and when I talk about protecting our rights, and every time I think of the fact that we had a community exposed to illegal levels of pollution for years, and they had no idea until we informed them that they had been exposed to these high levels of toxins. You know, that is just absolutely incomprehensible that you would have people exposed to these high levels of toxins and not have the sheer decency. To me, this is an issue of morality, and it also should be one of legality as well, because people have a right to be informed when they have been exposed to danger. I asked this question, are you opposed to choking death? We all witnessed the choking death of George Floyd. We were all outraged. Everyone braved COVID to go in, and almost everyone, people who had never participated in marches and protests, took to the streets about this choking death. And I understand this choking death took 8 minutes and 45 seconds. And so we saw this, you know, in this time frame. But if you are opposed to choking death, you should be opposed to any choking death, whether it's done by police officers or whether it's done by corporations for profit, because it might take a lot longer than 8 minutes and 45 seconds that we saw that led to the death of George Floyd. But make no mistake about it, environmental injustices kill. Environmental injustices such as exposures to wood pellets manufacturing is and can lead to choking death. It can lead to all types of health problems. It may not be this instant, horrific injustice that we all witness, but it is just as evil. It is just as bad. And I think that we need to really speak up about it. We need to be concerned about it. We need to take to the streets if necessary to protest these injustices. Who is supposed to be providing the legal protection to ensure our environmental rights? We have these so-called protection agencies. We've got the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. In every state, we have our state's environmental quality, and they're called a little different in each state. In my state, it's Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. They are supposed to be protecting us. They are not supposed to be guardians for corporations. And I do know that in a lot of states, in my state included, that there is in their mission statement, you will see something in there about also being, having a degree of responsibility as it relates to economic advancement, but we cannot have one at the expense of the other. So it is very important that we hold them accountable to we, the people. It's, you know, it is obvious every time I look back and look over some things, it's obvious. We don't have the access. We don't get out on the golf course. We don't go out voting. We don't have the access that corporate people have. But listen, we all pay taxes. So we have a lot invested in our protection. And why are we seeing failures in our protection? I think that in large part, we have to take some of the responsibilities because we are not lifting our voices loud enough to be heard. And it is very important that we do that. And when we talk about what do we want? Environmental justice. And you'll hear chants if you go out on any environmental and climate justice march. What do you want? Environmental justice, or what do you want? Justice. When do you want it? Now. So one thing, and whenever I think about this need for us to get to 1.5C, whenever I think about wood pellets and how people of color and low-income people are being disproportionately impacted, I cannot think of that without thinking about structural racism in general. And usually when we hear the words Mayday, which is this series is the Mayday series. And when you hear the words Mayday, which you never want to hear this if you're on a flight, when you hear Mayday, Mayday, it's a sign of distress. So I'm going to tell you, Mayday, Mayday. because we are in distress with this wood biomass issue. And as it relates to race, and more specifically racism, it's an important social determinant. Systemic and structural racism determines our fate on so many levels. Structural racism determines everything from our infant mortality to our life expectancy. Structural racism determines the quality of our education. Structural racism determines the quality of our environmental health, our health care, and our ability to even access health care. Structural racism determines the value of our homes, the proximity of our homes to toxic sites. Structural racism determines our ability to prepare for and recover from inevitable climate events. Structural racism positions us to be the least contributors to climate change, but the most impacted. Structural racism determines our ability to adapt to climate change, mitigate its impact, maintain the level of resilience and sustainability needed to thrive. So when we talk about the need to keep global warming well below 1.5 C, it is so important that we take a holistic approach to ensure justice and equity in the process. And what this means is we don't have the luxury of remaining siloed and patting ourselves on the back because we're trying to achieve the much needed goal to stay well below 1.5, but poisoning people and destroying our valuable forests in the process and still not getting us to where we need to be to save our planet. Yes, we must get well below 1.5 C warming, but we must not do so by any means necessary, turning a blind eye to those who harmed in the process. We must demand a just overall unemployment rate of well below 1.5%. We must demand to keep those without access to clean renewable energy to well below 1.5%. We must demand that climate-induced water contamination is kept well below 1.5%. We must demand an incarceration rate well below 1.5%. We must demand that food scarcity is kept well below 1.5%. We must demand an increase in mortality premediated by climate to be kept well below 1.5%. And we must demand equal pay and equal rights for women and absolutely no percentage differentials. The list is endless as it relates to social justice reform, and it is something that we must address along the way. And we have to start right here with something that too many people keep continuing to say that they don't know enough about. And it is very important that we all look at this and take a holistic approach to addressing it. Thank you so much.
First of all, I'd like to say good evening to everybody and thank Erniko for inviting me to this May Day. And what I would like for you to do right now is just kind of fix your mind and go on a trip with me. We're here in Northampton County. We are Tier 1 county. We have a lot of farmland, or we had a lot of farmland. And just imagine as a child growing up, instead of seeing log trucks up and down the highway, you saw tractors. Sometime you might have saw a mule and a wagon because people were farming. And as time go on, you know, you go to work every day and you think about when you come home, that's your safe place, a place where you can relax and enjoy because you've worked hard. And then some of us has worked hard enough to retire. And we just want some peaceful living. And all of a sudden, this big conglomerate, Enviva wood pellet plant come in your backyard, your front yard, everywhere you look. You know, if you look out your door, you see it. If you don't see it, you hear the noise or the bark of the bark in the trees, getting the bark off the tree, and that's a bump, 24/7. Traffic, 24/7, trucks in and out, and just imagine at night if you're laying there and you're trying to sleep and you hear the gears shifting and, you know, all the noise that comes with it. And then you think about, okay, I've worked hard and, you know, some of us on a fixed income, and because of Enviva, not only are the people that live right there impacted by it, but the whole Northampton County is impacted by Enviva, even though some of them live miles away. And you know why we were impacted? Because our commissioners gave them an incentive to come here. And when they gave them that incentive, that raised our taxes, our property taxes, to 6%. Now, remember I said we're a tier 1 county. So that means that we are one of the poorest there is. But right now, we are number 3 in the state of paying the highest property taxes. Now, what are we profiting from Enviva? We're profiting nothing. We can't sleep at night. We can't go out on our porch and sit down and enjoy the sunshine. We can't cook out unless we put a tent up to protect the food from the particulates that's in the air, the dust that's in the air. And like I say, you think when you've worked hard all day and you just want to come, but maybe sit out on the porch and just maybe talk to your neighbor. But you can't do that because eventually you're going to start sneezing or coughing or your nose will start running. So you're impacted in your own home. It's like being a prisoner in your own house. You don't have that freedom to go out in your yard and work in your flowers. As one of the ladies that live in the community, she'll be 83, her birthday. And she used to have a beautiful flower garden, you know, and now she says she can't do that because when she go outside, her nose runs. She doesn't sleep well at night because of the noise from the trucks. And then one night they had a fire back there and she was really scared because she just didn't know the extent of the fire and nobody would tell her, you know. In other words, they didn't come out to the neighbors and say, well, you know, we have a fire here, but we have it under control. So that was another worry of, you know, her being in her own home, scared to death. And this is what we're dealing with when we allow these companies to come to us. And I say to the people, this is a teaching lesson because it happens because you're not involved in your local government. You're not involved in some of the things that go on in your community. And I just want to tell you, you need to go to your economic development meetings because he's or she's the person that will go out and search for, they call it economic development, to come to your community. And from there, it goes to your planning board. And then your planning board, it goes to your commissioners. So you have to be careful when you're voting because everybody does not have your best interest at heart. You know, we have these elected officials that say, oh, you're my constituents, but once they get behind that desk, put on that shirt and tie, then, you know, they don't know you as constituents. They are where they need to be. So what you need to do is get involved. And when you hear of an Enviva, or if you hear of a plant that's coming to your community or a pole, you know, they're thinking to bring it to you, get out and get involved and fight it because everything is not economic development. They are poisonous. They're things that will kill you if you breathe long enough. And when they were they were given a Title V permit last year. And Patrick Anderson is an environmental lawyer. And he sent me some things. He said, you know, in this permit, these are the things that they didn't even address, which was the community has experienced lots of issues with dust and fallout, but the permit doesn't have sufficient protection for fugitive dust. So you got to look at our state offices, DEQ and DAQ. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then when we get sick, when we get asthma, when we get cancer, when we get COPD, the first thing they say, oh no, Enviva didn't cause that. Just the other week, CBS was here and the gentleman from Enviva, when the lady was saying that this is not pollen, this is dust, he said, oh, the dust didn't come from here. But when you look at the yard, they have a sawdust that looks like mountains. When the wind blows, that dust goes with it. They don't have anything to cover it to keep it from blowing. So you're inhaling it. And if it's on your cars, it's in your yard. If you're walking, it gets in on your shoes. And then if you take it inside of your house, you're still breathing it. So we're impacted by something that we're not benefiting from. It's a slow death. It's particulates in the air that you can't even see, but you're breathing it. And you know, when they came When you look at the forest, all the oxygen, where our oxygen? Oxygen is gone. When you look at so many animals now, when you ride up and down the highway, you see so many dead animals because their habitat has been taken away from them. Birds don't have trees to make nests anymore. Squirrels can't go up in a tree and make nests. You know, deers are roaming and running and people are seeing bears. This is because of Enviva and places like that just go out and clear cut our forests and just cut it down. And like Ms. Catherine said, they say, oh, the trees will grow back. You know, how long would it take a tree to grow back to maturity? It doesn't happen overnight. It won't happen overnight. And then when COVID came, they said, you know, Latinos and African-American people were more affected by COVID than anybody else. That's because when you look at our community, the impacts that we have, the factories and the dust and the the stench and all of that, we're breathing it. So it just, you know, it's not something that's automatic that just popped up overnight. We've been doing this for years. We've been breathing this. So when some come along and attack our immune system because it's already weak from inhaling stuff that we shouldn't inhale, then of course, yeah, we're more impacted than anybody else. But then when I look at Bethesda, Maryland, and I look at the complex, the Enviva office there, and I told somebody it looked like it should be out on a resort area somewhere. It's lavish. And they don't live anywhere around here. So they have no problem coming here, making a few donations to the food bank or you know, Enviva gave us this or Enviva gave us that. I looked at A&T State University and Michael Regan is, you know, he's EPA now, and that's his alma mater. So not too long ago, Enviva said that they were going to give them $250,000 over a 5-year period, which is $50,000 a year. When that ship leaves Chesapeake Port down in Virginia or wherever else, Wilmington, North Carolina, can you imagine how many thousands of dollars are going across the ocean? And you know, we have people that I've had people to come all the way from the Netherlands to interview me because they're upset because they have to pay that subsidy tax on something that they're not benefiting from. So, you know, it's profit over people. And when you put profit over people, you forget everything else. It's that greed for money. And, you know, however we get it, it's okay as long as we get it. But the little crumbs, I say the crumbs, not the residue, but the residue from the crumbs of their table. This is what they'll give out to a community. And they think that they've done them, you know, great justice. Oh, Enviva gave the fire department this, or Enviva gave the food bank this. I mean, we had a fire department before they came. We were eating before they came. But then this is how they, you know, advertise when they get ready to show off. Okay, we gave this organization this amount of money and we gave it, and you know, and some people take that and run with it because they think it's a great thing. But then the people that are directly impacted, those are the ones that are suffering and they don't see that. So, you know, get involved in your community. When you're there, there's a meeting, take time to go. You know, if you can't go, send someone and get educated. And, you know, the lack of knowledge, without it, we will perish. So if you get involved and just stay focused, you know, if you hear something, tell somebody. If you don't think that you can go, send somebody. Because, you know, we need this. And I just thank God for Miss Catherine and thank Erniko and Dogwood, because I'm so many miles away from them and they're so many miles away from us, but then we can sit here and look at each other and we can talk and, you know, explain, just like you said, George Floyd, I can't breathe. There's so many more of us, you know, not being able to breathe. And just like I say, the kids in the community, if they get sick with asthma, Enviva's not going to pay their bill. We didn't cause that. You know, we don't know why the child has asthma. So this is what we're dealing with. And just like Ms. Catherine said, we want justice, not tomorrow. We want it yesterday, because that's what we deserve. We were here before they came. So they invaded us. We didn't invade them. So, you know, just like I say, please get involved with your neighborhood. If you hear something that's going on, be a part of it. If you can't be a part, send somebody. If you don't feel like you can speak, write a letter or contact myself, Erniko, Miss Catherine, because, you know, we will be that voice for you. I know a lot of people say, I can't speak, I don't know what to say, but when you're in a position where, you might be fighting for your life, you will speak. You will most definitely speak. So I just thank you for the time that you have allowed me, and I hope I've said something to help somebody. And Erniko and Miss Catherine and Adele, again, I thank you for this opportunity. My heart, sometimes it hurts when I look around and see the things that our people are going through and they don't have to go through it. This is 2012. I mean, we're supposed to be in a better state than we were 50 years ago. So I say to everybody, get involved. That's all I can say is get involved some way, somehow, to try to make a difference. Thank you.
Ooh, thank you, Miss Belinda, Miss Kathy. I don't know how to come behind that other than to start telling my story. And for me, I got into this fight because I wasn't educated and someone took the opportunity to educate me. I come from rural area, South Carolina, in McCormick, South Carolina. And when she speaks about the jobs and stuff, I was a career coach for the state of South Carolina. And I managed 4 counties in what was the closest thing to a metro county we had. And so this is where I met Enviva in the community, because they came with the promises of jobs. And in this particular area where jobs were paying $13 to $14, they came in with the promise of $16, $18, $20, $24. And so for people who didn't have a big education, and people who aren't looking at the health of their children, but how can they feed their children? They're looking at the baseline of the day in and day out before they can get to the next thing. That promise of those jobs was a big deal. And so in my position, I was putting people in these positions with this company thinking that it was a great company, because nobody ever told me about the environmental impacts as it relates to health issues. And so on that end, I employed people. And once I employed them, I learned from one of the guys who got a job. They didn't retain the job because they didn't have the education. And so they were fired 90 days later, but were able to go back to this facility for much less money through a temp agency. And I learned that that was the narrative for this company. And that was a way for them to bring in their own people to do the jobs instead of the people of the community. And after that, I was asked by a friend to do some organizing around the issue. And I was educated on the issue. And for me, I didn't know, I moved to another area, Greenwood, South Carolina, and I didn't know that I was impacted. I come to find out I live less than 2 miles from this plant. So each and every day I'm impacted. And I learned of the common narrative that there's like a railway, there's trucks, there are all of these things. I hear trains each and every night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. Outside of that, these trains sometimes stay on the track 2 and 3 days, and traffic has to be rerouted. Outside of that, just all of the clear cuts in McCormick, South Carolina, where I previously lived, I was surrounded by 5 state parks within a 20-minute ride or 20-mile radius. And so I had the opportunity to breathe good air. I had good air quality. And coming to Greenwood, you don't get any of that. Now the greed is of the land, and cutting down the trees. Everywhere you go, there's a clear cut. Outside of that clear cut, there are trees left there, so they're not even utilizing all of the trees. Some of them they're just cutting down when they say that they're using waste wood. Oftentimes they leave a lot of trees there. I don't know why they do it, but they do. And private landowners sell their land. Where I am a commissioner, one of the guys told me that he sold his trees off his land. And he sold it, and he said that there was no issue with that. And I said, there's no issue for you because you're not impacted. or at least you think you're not impacted, because when they cut on a 70-mile radius. So 70 miles for me is from here in Greenwood to Columbia, South Carolina. That's a big radius to be cut and for you not to be impacted. And it is truly harmful to hear all of the things that are going on. And when I first started here at Dogwood, I heard about a $2.5 million fine that was out for DRACs, for air pollution in Gloucester, Mississippi. For me, it was important to go to this community after researching the demographics, because these were people who look like me. And this fight is for people who look like me. These plants are strategically placed in low income, what's considered impoverished communities, and people who oftentimes are robbing Peter to pay Paul just to get through the day. So they're not looking at the air quality, they're looking at their life quality. And so when I went to this community, I met one lady and she told me where this plant was. I went down the road to see this plant in this mobile home park. And as I was turning in, I'm sorry. As soon as I turned in, my eyes watered. I began to breathe a little heavier. And I was pulling up to take this picture and I seen two little kids come out where it said children are playing. Slow children are playing. And so for me, in that moment, it was hard, because if I can't breathe in this, how can they play in this? How can they be in this position? To me, they're being robbed of their right to live freely and having to maintain in this moment because somebody decided to do something to take away their freedom. And it hurts to be here in this place or in this space, fighting this fight where Black people have been fighting for over 400 years. And to have these different health disparities, just like Ms. Kathy talked about the knee on the neck of George Floyd, this is the knee on the neck of Black folks and humanity, people who live in this each and every day. They're throwing people pennies on a dollar to kill them. And their government doesn't care, because they're looking at how can we bring hope to the community. That's not hope. You're not healing your community if you're killing it. And so I've been working across the Southeast, particularly in Mississippi, with individuals who are impacted. Many of them are on this call, and I definitely appreciate y'all for showing up. And we're in this fight together. We're doing this together. I wanted to bring attention to what was going on because, again, this is the strategic narrative to be placed in low-income, rural area communities where people don't feel hope. And so they're feeling like they're giving you hope by throwing you a few dollars. But they're not telling you that they're killing you in the process. And I'll just pass it to Ms. Kathy.
Thank you so much, Erniko and Belinda. And every time I hear these ladies speak, I'm just extremely motivated. Going to Gloucester and having the experience in person, being able to experience what those residents were experiencing. Actually, I would say basically almost a life-changing experience for me. And it helped me realize quite a few things. First of all, I was fortunate enough to be able to come home, but to be honest, that visit has haunted me because there are people who can't leave. I mean, they're living right there, and their own family property. And the reason that I talk so much tonight about structural racism is because this is where all of this is. Unfortunately, we've made lots of strides, but we have a long way to go. And when you are deliberately seeking out communities because of the color of the skin of the residents and the amount of income that they make, that is structural racism. And this is where these plants are disproportionately located. And this is why the people weren't told. You know, there are just no other reasons, and you would like for it not to be that way. You would like for there to be different reasons, but unfortunately, some people in our society, especially people of color, especially low-income people, or basically no one cares about sacrificing people of color and people of low wealth. And it's important that everyone speaks up because this impacts all of us. So I don't know if, Adele, if there are questions before I continue talking. I'd like to be able to answer any questions that we have in the chat about this. But I will say for those of you who joined on Earth Day, that I did have maps that I showed where these are located, mostly for the most part for now, because they're going to come other places. But for now, these plants are mostly located in the Southeast US, the former slave states that produce cotton, that fueled the Industrial Revolution. And now we're looking at these same states fueling an energy revolution, mostly in the UK for now, but it is quickly spreading, and people in Asia are now ramping up their use of wood biomass. So any questions, Adele?
Yes, we have a couple here. So I will start with Louise Chadwick wants to know, what can individuals do to slow biomass production in South Carolina?
I think Ms. Belinda had answered a bit of that, and maybe you want to take a stab at it, and then I'll try and weigh in, Ms. Belinda.
Okay, as I said before, your economic developer, they have meetings, and that's who you pay to go out and supposedly bring good industry to your community. The first time we went to a meeting, I think they almost passed out because, I mean, they've never had anybody from the public to come to the meeting. And they was like, oh, we're so glad that you all are here. We've never had anybody to come. And I'm like, okay, get ready because we'll be back next month, you know? And I had to go back to the NAACP meeting, and I had to tell the people, you know, this is where we need to be in these meetings so that we will have a chance. Once you know what's coming, if you know what's coming or what they're trying to bring, you have time to fight it. But once it's in motion, it's hard to stop it. And I use one example. We had this company that had bought 825 acres of land, and they wanted to put a coal ash recycling plant right down in Seaboard, which is about 10 miles from here. But because the letters came out prematurely to the adjacent property owners, and you know, it came to us, and we went before our commissioners, and they claimed that they didn't know anything about it, But anyway, we started organizing, and that was about 5 years ago, and we're still organized to this day, even though with the pandemic, we couldn't do it face-to-face. We do virtual meetings, or we get updates through emails or whatever. But because we were there, and because those letters came out, we had a chance to organize and get a chance to fight. And that's what we did. And I mean, we packed the house, you know, when it went to the economic developers, then the planning board, and your county commissioners have that final say. They have that final say as to what come in your community. And I mean, it was like, it was so many of us, they had to take us in sessions. That's how many people showed up. I know we had about 300 to 400 people, but we stopped that coal ash plant. So this is what you have to do is, like I say, get involved in your communities, find out when these meetings are, and attend, you know, and just tell your neighbors and start packing the house. And when they see numbers, you know, they kind of get a little frantic because they're going to want to run again. But see, what we did with that group of commissioners, that, you know, had told us they didn't know anything about it. When voting time came, guess what we did? We voted them all out. So we, you know, send them on home. We don't need this. So that's what you have to do is, like I say, get involved in your local government, attend the meetings and put the word out. And once the word get out, you're going to have some people that's going to be concerned. And we were, and that's how we stopped it.
Great.
Thank you. And it's not always going to be easy as well. You know, yeah, you're not going to get just an instant fix. So, Adele.
Sorry,
before you chime in, Adele, I'm sorry. But to Miss Belinda's point, education and organization, you have to organize people. What people don't realize, the power lies in the hands of the people. You have to get your people together, put everybody on one accord, and move in harmony together. I got into an elected official seat because I was already organizing my community around some issues, and people trusted me. And I organized the community to do what we needed to happen. To Ms. Belinda's point, is that economic development. Coming to these, our hope is to educate you and give you the tools that you need to go in your community to make those things happen. So if we're telling you to organize your people. We're here for you. In whatever capacity you need us, we're here to do exactly what you need us to do. And the knowledge and wisdom that we have, we don't mind sharing. That is exactly why each and every last one of us are on this call right now. I'll pass it to Adele.
One more thing before we go, Erniko. As Miss Catherine said, a lot of people look for an overnight fix, and sometimes it's not an overnight fix. Now, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was coming right through Gettysburg. It took us 6 years. 6 years of rallying and being together and protesting. But guess what? The Atlantic Coast Pipeline is gone. So that's what you have to do. But some people, they ain't gonna do nothing, and they get tired. But I tell them, you got to stay the course. If you want something and want it bad enough, you got to keep fighting until you get it. And I mean, we were, when I got the word that the Atlantic Coast Pipeline had been canceled, people would have thought I had 1,000 people here in my house. I was running around hollering, "Oh my God, is it true? Is it true?" So I used the term, it was like David and Goliath. They say that, David couldn't kill Goliath, but he did, and they say we couldn't stop the pipeline, but we stopped it. So, once you get started, you have to, even if you have to just take a little break sometime and rest out, but don't give up. Do not give up. You got to stay the course.
And also keep in mind, sometimes it might be painful, but you might also have people in your own community, because this industry is very good about about divide and conquer. And so they will come to some in the community, and you may have to take those people aside and educate them. And sometimes you can't educate them, but you have to continue to stand for what's right. Adele.
Amen to all of that. Okay, so another question. How can we help a community, or what resources do you bring into the community in places that we have current facilities, like what has been discussed? It may be a little easier to be proactive, but what can we do to be reactive in these situations?
I'm gonna go first. I told my executive director today, we need to take it to the streets. We need rallies, we need protests, we need any and everything moving. These people don't care about us. So there is no need to be polite in what we're doing. If you need to rally, if you got people, if you want to go stand out in front of Drex, call us up at Dogwood. I'm willing to come out, and I'm willing to bring people. I'm sure Miss Kathy is willing to come with me. I'm sure Miss Belinda is willing to come with me. We want to help. Rallies, have cookouts, talk about the issues. And if you're, and I don't know, this may be sensitive, maybe not, but if you're white and you know this issue, tell your white folks about it. Because in order to win this, although the narrative is most people who are heavily impacted are Black, we need everybody from all fronts to win this thing. The impact and making an impact, while those who are our allies are being our accomplices in this. Show up so we can show out.
And to that, Erniko, you know, you're saying, you know, if you're white, there's just as many white people that are impacted as Black people. Because you know what? When the wind blows, it just don't blow on us. It blows everywhere. So that same air that we breathe, and they are breathing it too. They might not be right in their neck door, but see, wind carries. So like I say, you know, it ain't no white air and Black air, it's air. So they breathe the same air that we breathe.
And as Dr. King said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I think we all know that even the civil rights movement, I grew up in the civil rights movement as a child, and I do know that we had people of all races and ethnic backgrounds who, you know, took part in those marches, and it made a difference. And that's what we need to do now. Adele.
We got just a couple more questions. This one is a very good question. That multi-million-dollar fine mentioned earlier, how much was given back to the community?
None.
Yeah, in a word, none. And they didn't even know about it. So yeah, not that it would. And let's put that fine in perspective. That's the amount of profit that Drax makes a day, and so that's $2.5 million for 8 years, and so you multiply 8 times 365. So that was not even a slap on the wrist.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question. If you all had the ear of Governor Reeves, Governor Cooper, Governor McMaster, Michael Regan, or even President Biden, what would you say? What would you want them to know about this issue? And what would you tell them needs to be done?
I've had about 5 meetings with Michael Regan before he went to Washington. So he's familiar with everything that's going on around here. Matter of fact, before last year, he did a drop through, I would say a drop through for each county, supposedly, you know, checking on things. So it's nothing that I can tell him now that I haven't already told him. As for Governor Cooper, I feel some kind of way because, you know, he was against fracking down on the coast because of tourism, but he had no problem with a pipeline coming through our community, and we were in what you call a blast zone, meaning that if one of those pipes had ruptured or burst, then we would have been in a tower of inferno. So I don't know anything that I could tell him that he don't already know either.
Erniko.
For me, just come and see. Come to these communities and see what's going on. Come to the South and see what the South has to say about these policies that are in place, these things that are going on. Come and experience the things that we experience in the South, because all of them know that the South is the poorest in the region as it relates to jobs and stuff, but the richest in resources. And after they come and see, would you want to live here? Would you want your children to live here?
I hate to keep breaking in, but Erniko, let me give you a last. I had 3 members from DEQ, 4 members from the advisory board to come here to my home. And I took them on a tour. And that lady that I was talking about that couldn't go out in her yard, and they sat there at her house about a half hour more. So it's not that they don't know, because they've been here. They've been here, sweetheart. So like I said, I don't know nothing else to do.
And I agree. People know and they don't care because unfortunately some members and some people in society are considered indispensable. And unfortunately, that comes with the territory. It depends on your race a lot of times and your income. And I certainly look at this from the aspect of from a moral perspective. Most of these people claim to be Christian, but they have no problems with putting profit before people. And, that's kind of when we go back with doing for the least of those, because they just have no problem with coming up with any excuse for what's happening. And again, within minutes, if you ever go to Gloucester, Mississippi, and experience this, you're just within minutes you're suffering. And I just can't imagine what happened with the people who are having to live there. And a lot of times people feel like, again, and this is what I hear from people who do know and do know better, well, we've got to get to 1.5 C. We got, and that's why a lot of times I don't even bring up about the harms that's being done to people, because they're all about policy. And so, and I just say, well, if you don't care about people, this is not getting us to 1.5 C. But we have to look at the whole picture. And a lot of times people will accept these dangerous industries out of desperation. And because they have nowhere else to turn, they have nowhere else where they can get any income or any economic advancement. And Erniko, I know you had mentioned you were in a program, in a kind of a workforce program, where people could come and they could work there temporarily. And I think they could work there temporarily even if they had been in trouble with the law. But then when it came time for a permanent position, they were not able to have that permanent position. So you aren't getting any jobs from this. You're not getting to 1.5 C. So I just don't understand why we continue to embrace this. But one of the first things I would ask the Biden administration to do is take down wood biomass as a renewable energy source that was listed under the Trump administration. That is something that can be done with the stroke of a pen.
We are a little bit over, so this will be my last question. This work is very heavy. And so I want to ask you all, what gives you hope in this work? Where do you find hope?
I find hope, and I know that God He's God, and He said in His word that He wouldn't put any more on us than we could bear. And sometimes, He sent us things to test our strength, to test our faith. But I do believe, in the end, things are going to be turning around. I'm claiming Jubilee. That's what I'm claiming. And I just have to keep claiming Jubilee, because that's what gives me the strength to go on, to know that one day or somehow, just like with the pipeline, things are going to change. I don't right now see how, because like I say, when you go before your government officials, I asked Mr. Regan the last time that I was with him, when they were giving the Enviva their permit, renewed their permit. And I asked him, with so many people that was opposed to that and a few people were for it. And so I said to him, with all the people that was in opposition, then how was this permit granted? And he said that as long as they're in compliance with what the states say that they should be, then we have to grant them the permit. So then my next question was, then why have a public hearing if this is already a done deal? And they said, well, that was because they would take the comments from the public hearing to adjust the permitting laws. And I'm like, well, when is that going to happen? So I just have to have faith that God is going to, He's going to see us through. We might not get it all, but we're going to get some. And that's my belief.
And I will say, not only do I take inspiration from Dana Smith, from Belinda, Erniko, Emily, but just looking at this chat, Anita, Tina, Louise, Crystal. It gives me so much hope. You know, anytime that we can reach just one person, but just reading the information that you put in the chat re-energizes me. And thank you so much for that. I see what you're planning to do, and that helps me to know that I need to redouble my efforts. So thank you.
For me, if we can reach one person, I'm motivated. And being in the position that I'm in to work in communities where people look like me, I'm motivated each and every day. Because they look like me, that motivates me. That gets me out in the community to be able to have conversations where wisdom lies from two prominent Black women right here motivates me. The torch that they're carrying is the torch that I'll one day carry, and hope I can do it half as good as they're doing, because they're out here, they're in this fight, they're doing exactly what needs to be done. Just like Miss Kathy said, she came up in the civil rights era. Miss Belinda did the same thing. And so this is wisdom that we have right now, right here in this moment, that can transcend and transform the stuff that we're doing. They know what we need to be doing. So to be in this moment in time with them is magical. And although we're standing against a lot of things, we're standing in this moment with people, with two Black women who have been through the movement, who know what to do, who know how to stand tall and stand strong in the midst of adversary. That gives me hope each and every day. So
I thank you, Erniko, and I'm going to leave with this. You know, I have a sister that was at the March on Washington. She was a member of the SCLC, and she used to take me, and I was, you know, just a young child, to some of the meetings, and I think that's how I got motivated to, you know, see things and try to help with things that was going on. So I owe her a lot for doing that.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for this powerful, enriching, beautiful evening. I am so grateful to all of you for your time, for your wisdom, and for your gifts. So thank you so much. I think that is all for tonight. And just as a reminder, we will send out an email with the recording to everyone. So if you have any questions that come up in the meantime, there'll also be some emails that you can communicate with us. And as always, you can join our movement at Dogwood Alliance, www.dogwoodalliance.org. You can follow Ms. Kathy Egland, you can follow Belinda in her work, you can follow Erniko in her work. So please, we will send resources of how to stay in touch with all of us. But thank you all for being here tonight. We really appreciate you spending your time with us.
And I would like to say, join us next Thursday. We talked about taking a trip to Gloucester. We actually have a documentary that we're going to share, and we're going to have people from Gloucester on the line with us. So please look forward to next week. We will have Miss Carmela Wren Causey with us, and we will have Mr. Jimmy Brown. So super excited for you guys. If you've never been to Gloucester, no worries. We got you next week, same time, and we'll be able to talk to people who are impacted. So thank you so much for being here this evening, and we look forward to having you next Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.